Those who dwell in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For the Lord will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence, and will cover you with his pinions. And under the Lord's wings you shall find refuge. God's faithfulness is our shield and our buckler. We invite you to take your hymnals and turn with us to hymn number 364, Because He Lives. Stand with us singing as we celebrate the life of William Murray Gibbons. Stand with us, please. God sent his Son, they called him Jesus. He came to love, heal and forgive, to buy my pardon, and the grave is there to prove my Savior lives, because He lives, I can face tomorrow, because He lives, all fear is gone, because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy He gives. But greater still, the calm assurance His child can face uncertain days, because He lives, because He lives, I can face tomorrow, because He lives, all fear is gone, because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. And then one day I'll cross that river, I'll fight life's final war with pain, and then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory, and I'll know He lives, because He lives, I can face tomorrow, because He lives, all fear is gone, because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. So great to see all of you here. We're here to celebrate the life of Murray Gibbons. He's touched everyone in this room in some very special way. We're here to celebrate him today. But Murray got to celebrate Sunday. As we had a wonderful service here, the choir was beautiful, the music, and out front we had the cross. And as Cheryl sang, and we all took flowers and put them on the cross, we just had to think it was one of the prettiest Easter Sunday mornings we'd ever seen. But sometime around that 12 o'clock mark was about time Murray passed away. He'd probably look at each one of us and say, y'all just thought that was pretty down there. You should have been up here with me. I think that'd be the way Murray would say it. There's so many things you could talk about Murray. I think my one memory would be, just in talking with him, he said that after he got out of seminary and he was going into ministry, he said that I believe his parents or family or someone gave him a journal or a record where he kept up with the people that were born, baptized, married. It was just hundreds of people he and I talked about. I'd like to remind you that Murray has each one of your names written in his ledger, and it's signed on his heart. He loved you, just like God has each of your names in his register. And one of these days we'll be able to celebrate just like Murray did. He'll be able to look down and say, gosh, how beautiful it really was. Could we pray? Dear God, you place memories within each of our hearts, and you've placed a special person, Murray, at some point in time in each of our lives. How blessed we are. We keep thinking and looking at our blessings and thinking there's no way that we can say thank you. And there's truly no way to say thank you, God, for placing Murray in each of our lives. We lift up a prayer today in celebration, a celebration for a life well lived, a life spent in ministry for you. How blessed we were to have touched Murray Gibbons. Amen.
Shelter of the Lord, who abide in his shadow for life. Say to the Lord, my refuge, my rock, in whom I trust, and he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. The snare of the fowler will never capture you, and famine will bring you no fear. Under his wings your refuge, his faithfulness your shield, and he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. For to the angels is given a command to guard you in all of your ways. Upon their hands they will bear you up, lest you dash your foot against the stone. And he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the sun, and hold you, and hold you, and hold you in the palm of his hand, of his hand.
Hi. I knew today in my coming here that, among other things, the music would be amazing, and I'm looking forward to more. And then there's Wendy. Man, can she play the piano or what? Oh man, I just love her. My name is Greg Varner, and I served this church from 2010 to 2013. I want to thank you for having me back. I want to thank you guys very much. Pat, I want to thank you. Matt, I want to thank you, and all of you for allowing me to be here today. Hear these words from Psalm 37. The mouths of the righteous utter wisdom, and their tongues speak what is just. The law of their God is in their hearts, and their feet do not slip. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. So about 8 years ago, I stepped into this pulpit for the very first time, little on edge, I guess, but I had this certain confidence that I think God gives you when you believe that you've had a calling to ministry. While I had that confidence, I'll admit I was a little nervous the very first time. But I will also tell you that prior to that, I did a lot of public speaking in my lifetime, and I had in fact studied the art of delivering a speech or a message or a sermon. And in that study, I found only one constant, only one, in all that study. And that constant was that no matter how much preparation you did, the ability to actually connect with one's audience or congregation was in fact an unknown. No matter how much preparation you did, there was no reasonable way to predict how they might react or what they might say. What I soon came to realize is that with Murray Gibbons in the first pew, the unknown was beyond my wildest imagination. I asked myself, what have I gotten into? The next 3 years, I was able to answer that question. Without my asking, I had this new awesome friend, a person that was invaluable to me, a person that would become an example for me to follow most of the time. He became a mentor to me. The mouths of the righteous utter wisdom, and their tongues speak what is just. The law of their God is in their hearts, and their feet do not slip. Without my asking, Murray quickly became my sanctuary. While I was trying to learn, he was my teacher. I began to understand what this calling meant, what it was about. I began to learn and perhaps was seeking wisdom. How do you do this? Seeking wisdom. Now, I guess if you know me, most of you, you know that I didn't come today without at least one definition for you. So I looked up the word wisdom, and you're just going to love this definition. Here's what it says. Wisdom is the ability to know what is true or right. Wisdom. Without fail, Murray Gibbons offered me truth and understanding in this mission that God had called me to. Without fail, his advice for me was true and right. The mouths of the righteous utter wisdom. Then I guess we got to ask ourselves, but what is the righteous? Who are the righteous? Proverbs 10 tells us, I think. It says this, the lips of the righteous nourish many. I mean, was that just not all over Murray Gibbons? See, it wasn't just me. It was all those that came for years and years before me that Murray Gibbons offered nourishment to, a wealth of giving, kindness. The lips of the righteous nourish many. I can't think of a better way for me to describe for you the many, many, many fireside chats that I had with Murray Gibbons. And they were fireside chats. And it didn't matter when I was in that den with him. If it was August, that space heater was on full blast. But all of you welcomed Nancy and I in unbelievable ways. Stanley and Mary and all your family, you were unbelievable to us in your welcoming and your showering us with love that makes God smile. And I thank you for that. As a new pastor, which I was in 2010, you also get advice from other pastors. You know, we have pastors' meeting, and I will tell you that they are the most boring thing in the world. But we have these clergy meetings, and as I was began to gather with other pastors, one such advice was this. Greg, I sure hope you don't have a retired pastor in your congregation, because they're nothing but trouble. That was so far from the truth. Murray was an incredible blessing to us. I once had a funeral to do in Pennsylvania, and I just didn't want to fly. I hate to fly. Well, as most of you know, I drive a pickup and have for years. Well, Murray would have nothing to do with the fact that I was going to drive a pickup to Pennsylvania. He made Nancy and I take his car. There were no questions. That was the way it was going to be. Then I'm reminded, it's a good memory, I think, the men's group here just grew and blossomed when Nancy and I were here. And we would occasionally, the men would gather and prepare a meal for the ladies. Ladies' night, right? So the men would gather and cook, and they did an awesome job, and we did different things for entertainment. I came up with a brilliant idea in one of these gatherings that I asked all the men to prepare to tell at least one joke. So all the men were taking their turn, and they'd go up front, and they were, they had their joke, and they'd practiced and all that. But then, when Murray got up and headed to the front of that room, Mary was literally under the table. Just this look of panic. What would Murray want me to say today? I kept asking myself that on the drive down here. And I think it's pretty simple. Because Murray stands in the grace of Jesus and the God that created him. Murray would have me to say that he wants to see us all again. And if there is ever any doubt in your mind about whether or not that will happen for you, your ticket can be punched just this way, by believing and claiming the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is just that simple. Oftentimes when I'm preparing remarks for a celebration of life and service, another question I ask myself, now that Murray is going to be with Jesus, I ask myself, how has heaven changed? I didn't have enough paper, and you don't have enough time. But if there ever was a time when this God of all creation and of all blessing might have just rolled back a little on that throne and taken it all in, this was that time. In Hebrews 13, it says this: "Through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips that openly profess his name. And do not forget to do good and share with others, for with such sacrifices, God is pleased." God is pleased. Now, I'm not sure of a lot of things. I don't know if I know a lot of things. But there's one thing that I am sure of. For his sacrifice, for his giving, for his love, and for his godly wisdom to me regularly for those 3 years, I'm sure of this: God is pleased. Thank you, Murray. Thank all of you. Jesus said this: "All this I've spoken while still with you, but the advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you of everything I have said to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give it to you as the world gives." Now this next part I love. "Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Murray, we will see you soon. Amen.
I'm kind of homesick for a country to which I've never been before.
who said goodbyes, will there be spoken? For time won't matter anymore. Beulah land, I'm longing for you, and someday on thee I'll stand. There my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land. I'm crossing now, crossing the river, where my faith will end in sight. There's just a few more days to labor, then I will take my heavenly flight. Beulah land, I'm longing for you, and someday on thee I'll stand. There my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land. Beulah land, I'm longing for you, and someday on thee I'll stand. There my home shall be eternal. Beulah land, sweet Beulah land.
Greg and I are wearing our robes and stoles today because if you knew Murray, you knew one thing there was about him. He liked to dress up. He wanted it first class or no class at all. We're going to amend the program for just a few moments. I have greetings from California that I'd like to share with you from two of Murray's dearest friends, Bud and Laura from the Glendale Church. Dear Stanley, Mary, Kelly, Chad, and all of Murray's family, I never wanted to write this letter because I had planned for God to intervene with Murray's health and grant us many more years of friendship. But God and Murray had other plans, so here I go. Our North Glendale pastor, John Black, died suddenly of a heart attack in April of 1982. The district superintendent went to work with the bishop and the cabinet, shuffling ministers and trying to give us a pastor with experience to deal with the shock that was lingering in our congregation. The district superintendent called a meeting of the PPRC in mid-June and let us know that their decision and to introduce us to the Reverend William Murray Gibbons. He was from the Yorba Linda United Methodist Church, a man who really wasn't looking to move, but was judged to be a good fit and a good tonic for the Glendale Church. We liked Murray immediately, and we knew we had a promising appointment. That turned out to be an understatement. Murray was a quick learner and assumed church leadership immediately with grace and ease. The parsonage needed some major cleaning and refurbishing, so he pitched in, helping and directing the work. He assumed the pulpit on July the 5th and preached his first sermon. Many members of the Yorba Linda Church showed up to cheer Murray on and to grouse with us about him being reassigned. One commanding fellow stood up in our congregation and made comments we have never forgotten. You people at North Glendale, you're lucky and you don't know what to expect. But you're going to love this man, and believe me, you ain't seen nothing yet. Murray impressed everyone. They wanted to not only shake his hand, but to hug him. Soon after his first Sunday, Laura and I invited Murray and Annie Lou to lunch at our house after church to get better acquainted along with the several families. The Yorba Linda group showed up again at church, so we added a few more chairs and a couple of tables, and we included Dick and Joanne Hook and Joanne and Ray Van Martyr. And that luncheon started a long-standing friendship among Murray's former and current church members. Murray arrived at Glendale with a large family, not only a swarm of friends from his past churches, but we soon got to know Annie Lou, Audra, David, Kelly, Stanley, Mary, and Chad, Aunt Vernon, and this is one I never heard of, Aunt Eunice with her high heels. I need to hear that story. And many other people by name and circumstance, even though we never met them. Books could be written about Murray Gibbons, but here are a few thoughts. Jesus came not only to give life, but to give it more abundantly, and so did Murray. He was the epitome of the phrase, life is for living. He showed us how to visit the infirmed and what to say to cheer on their lives. He spoiled his church and friends by sharing his talents for decorating and cooking, and he was a dazzling chef for church meals and home meals. He had perfected some specialty foods such as the best ever twice-baked potatoes and English trifle that is better than the English could ever make. His parties and his church parties were legendary. His home was always a welcome gathering place for dinner, for events, for honoring visitors. Our church marked milestones for members with Murray. Under his mentoring, we decorated for all the great services each year, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and even spring and autumn. He was always chosen the local Methodist conference. He was always chosen by the local Methodist conference to host and plan the dinners and events. He performed all three of our children's weddings and baptized our grandchildren just as he had done for dozens of other families. We shared several major trips with him to Hawaii, each one so joyful that they remained the most talked about trips. There were always serendipitous incidents, and on that we still recall with big belly laughs. He was unselfish. He shared his home with an expectant mother in need. He gave his best Ford jacket to a homeless man in front of Ralph's Market on a winter night because the fellow looked cold. And he told the fellow, "Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, wear it, take it. I've got one at home just like it," when he really didn't. He gave his old Lincoln Town car, we called it the tuna boat, that's another story I got to hear, to a man whose car had fallen apart. He gave away his Las Vegas winnings, $1,500 to a single mom with 5 children at the church, $500 to another single mom, a waitress at Shaker's Restaurant where he frequently ate breakfast, thousands to the church and to church families with special needs. He established the Old Chicks, I know about that one, at North Glendale. He liked to snap their girdles. A wonderful group of widowed friends who were important in the church and who became important in his life. They loved Murray and got together at Lovick's countless times to celebrate each other's birthdays. Laura didn't qualify as old, but was the hostess of the group. Orma, Midge, Blanche, Mildred, Dottie, Margaret, and others. Murray was the pastor for everyone. People wanted him to do the sacraments for them, perform important rituals, do family baptisms, perform their marriages, officiate at funerals, and speak at their memorial services. They put money in their wills to assure that Murray would be there. He was not a fan of church conferences, and he spoke with great weariness whenever they were mentioned. He was the only preacher we ever known that had a professionally produced video about his tenure at our church. Murray loved the movies and the acting of movie stars, but he always wished those actors would confine their comments and opinions to the movies and not other subjects. Nobody loved the Academy Awards more than Murray, and he used the event as an excuse to throw or attend a party. He and Audra were once invited to the awards, and Murray was known by several movie stars and even performed services for them and their relatives. Murray wonderfully corrupted us with his Las Vegas trips. He made countless trips with many different friends and was the center of attention with his stories, laughter, prayers, blessings, our fellowship, and blessings the machines as we gathered for food or just talking. His last trip to California was last August when Cousin Whit accompanied him and joined in on the fun, making a lasting memory for all of us. Laura and I loved Murray and chummed around with him. We will always treasure the hundreds of times he would call and say, "Let's visit," "Let's go to dinner," or "Let's go to the show." And we were always excited, willing, and ready. We remember with fondness Murray arriving unannounced, pulling up in his black Camaro on Friday night on his way home from visiting the sick. He would get out of the car humming, as he always did. He would come up the walkway humming. He'd stand on the porch humming. He'd ring the doorbell humming. And if we didn't answer the door fast enough, he'd beat on the door, ready to go visit. We were always there. And if we saw or heard Murray coming, one of us would say, "Quick, it's Murray," and we would scramble to do a quick pickup and dash to the door and greet him with the laughter and "Come on, let's go," he always had. When he was moved to Irvine, we went to visit and always told him our life was way more boring without him around. And it was. A highlight of our lives was visiting Murray in Turbyville in 2008. We were welcomed with twice-baked potatoes. We stayed in his wonderful home for several days and mingled with Mary and Stanley, and we helped them serve dinner to the local high school football team. We met Murray's friends and ate with them at the Chat and Chew. We explored his farm and its many buildings, marveled at the Gibbons family cemetery, and drove around visiting with Murray to all of his former churches, including where he was first pastor. We visited his current church and talked a long time with Reverend Charlie, who kept a warning about Murray, lovely taped above his filing cabinet. We spent several days in Myrtle Beach with Murray, traveling to Savannah and to Charleston, and then got to make the convoluted trip back to Glendale by way of Florence and Charlotte and Los Angeles, the route Murray often traveled when he came to his western home. It was a happy trip, and knowing we could see Murray soon, when he planned to stay with us a few days before we drove to Las Vegas, it was not a sad departing. But now his departure is sad, and we feel cheated not to have him around. We can't call him anymore and hear his laughter and get his advice and share his events or our plan for the next trip. Murray indeed gave us, all of his countless friends in California, a more abundant life. Bud and Laura. P.S. Murray would have loved the comments we're getting when notifying family and friends. "Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for letting us know. I want to go to the service," from many people. "Oh, wow. What a perfect day to be called to heaven." No more suffering for Murray. "I'm so sorry. We'll really miss him. just like Murray, to pick the day of resurrection and April Fool's Day. Oh no, he did our wedding. Murray baptized me, and on and on. This is from Bud and Laura. For those of you who were not at the graveside Monday, I started off my remarks with these words. 85 years ago, a tadpole was born. And it swam around Puddin' Swamp and grew into a frog. It actually grew into a bullfrog. A big bullfrog. If you know much about Disney, you know there's a story about the prince and the frog. And I kissed the frog. And he turned into my prince. And he turned into our prince. 85 years ago, this past January, on the banks of Puddin' Swamp was born a boy to a young couple, William and Annie Lou Gibbons. They named their child William Murray Gibbons. Those dear parents nurtured him as best they could, loved him, taught him how to work hard, how to love God, how to serve others and himself, and be himself. Who knew that over the course of his life, he would touch hearts and lives of thousands of people, from celebrities like Judy Garland and Clint Eastwood to common folks like me and you? Who knew that he would dance with an actress like Natalie Wood at an Oscar dinner party and entertain at the dinner tables of Becky's and the Chat and Chew? Who knew that at a revival service at New Zion United Methodist Church, a young teenager would accept Jesus as his personal Savior and accept the call into ministry of sharing God's love with both sides of the U.S. continent? Who knew that this short, rotund man would have a heart as big as all out of doors and love each one of us and see each one of us like we were princes and not the paupers that we actually are? Who knew that this God-fearing servant of the living God, ambassador of the love of Christ, would become with much affection, the Pope of Puddin' Swamp? Side note, oftentimes when a pope passes away, they make him a saint. I'm not too sure about Murray. It's kind of questionable whether he'll ever achieve sainthood or not. Yes, he had his questionable times, like his love of Las Vegas and the sound of a slot machine ringing in his winnings. Snapping a few girdles. He would come back from California and say, "I snapped a few girdles, boys. Snapped a few girdles." He would display the Gibbons temper with me from time to time. That frank, forthright language when you get on his bad side. And he had a love for a good joke. Sometimes dirty. Oh, excuse me, in the South we call that colorful, sometimes very colorful, but he loved a good joke. Yet in our hearts, he's already a saint. Murray and I would sit and reminisce about the ministry experiences, and I remember the many ministry stories where Murray showed the love of God above and beyond the norm. In Paul's letter to the church at Galatians, he declares what a true servant of God would be like. He says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Well, self-control, we've both failed because we like to eat, but that's all right. Against such there is no law. That, to me, my friend, sums up Murray's life. For example, at one of his churches, he had a young teenager dying with cancer. Excuse me. And one evening while Murray was visiting the young man in the hospital, Murray was getting ready to leave, and he asked, could he have prayer? And from this weakened state, the young man asked Murray if he could stay with him the night. And of course, Murray said yes. And he assured the young man's parents that they should go home and get some rest. Murray pulled up a chair beside the bed, held the young man's hand, and off to sleep the young man went. Every so often during the night, the young man would wake up roused just enough to make sure Murray was still there, holding his hand. During the early morning hours, the young man rallied, and he wanted to talk to Murray, and he told Murray, he said, "The reason why I wanted you to stay tonight is because I know I'm going home, and I don't want Mom and Dad to see me pass away." So Murray continued to sit by the young man's bedside and hold his hand. And a few hours later, right at sunup, just as the dawn was breaking, the youth passed away, comforted because he was in God's presence and he was holding Murray's hand. Another story took place in the late 70s when the AIDS epidemic, that we knew little about that disease. A family in his church had a son that was dying with AIDS. He contracted because of his lifestyle. Murray heard about the young man and his sickness, and he asked the parents, could he visit with the young man, which he did. He spent many hours sharing God's love and forgiveness with this young man. And finally, one Sunday, the young man came to church with his parents to worship service. And Murray, in his boisterous, unique style from the pulpit, said, "Welcome." He called the young man's name and made over him. At the end of at the conclusion of the service, the young man and his family exited the sanctuary. And Murray gave the young man a handshake and a bear hug. And he thanked him for coming and encouraged him to come back. As Murray continued to greet parishioners, at the front door, a prominent lady of the church approached Murray, and she said to him, "I saw you touch that boy. I never want you to touch me again. And furthermore, that young man should not come to church. He shouldn't be allowed to come here and spread his disease. And if he comes, I'll never be back." And Murray said, without batting an eye, looked at the lady and said, "Where would you like your membership letter sent? It'll be in the mail tomorrow." But Murray often confessed to me that he really wanted to give the woman a few choice words from his prior life, but the ministry and the church surroundings kept him from saying what was really on his mind and his heart. So he tried to share God's love. I could share many more stories of Murray's ministry experiences, but time won't permit. And suffice it to say, our world is richer, more colorful, and joyful because of this man called Murray Gibbons. Murray had an affinity or flair for making everything first-rate in his life. An example comes to mind about Murray's drive to make every worship the best experience possible. While at one of his California charges, Murray met a young man who was doing graduate work in college for his advanced music degree. The young man was in need of work so that he could help live and pay his bills and pay his tuition. So Murray convinced the church elders, as the story goes, to take this young man on and make him the minister of music at the church. And for 2 years, that church had the premier music program in the community. It was wonderfully enhanced worship services, all because of the faith Murray had in hiring a college student named Mac Wilberg. Now, you might not recognize Mac Wilberg's name, but if I mention his work today, you'll know him in the quality of his work, the caliber, because Mac is the director of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Murray loved the finer things of life, eating off good china, symphony concerts, Broadway plays, Puddin' Swamp singers, and hearing Carolyn Newsom sing Pie Jesu. Murray loved traveling and viewing firsthand God's handiwork of creation. He loved adventure, from the eating exotic foods in foreign lands to luau's in Hawaii. If you haven't noticed, to riding camels with his mom in Egypt. That's the picture we have in front of us. You need to get a picture you need to look at that. That's a good picture of Murray and his excitement. He had a zest for life, and seized every opportunity to enjoy it. Murray loved ministry and asked him once why he never married. He said, well, because I was married to the ministry. I knew that God's calling on my life would be full-time and take all of my energy, all of my time, all of my resources, probably most all of my money. So I chose never to marry. I asked him if he was ever lonely and regretted his decision to never marry, and he said no. He explained to me that life afforded him the time to experience life and the love of his family and friends, especially his sister Audra. And boy, did those two have some adventures together, according to Murray. One of the times he talked about was when they went to the Academy Awards. Murray pulled up out front, the red carpet. When he went to get out of the car and turn it over to the valet, Audra was already on the rope line signing autographs like she was a movie star. Now that's living life to the fullest. Murray's life wasn't perfect by any means, and I don't intend to stand here in front of you and tell you that he was a perfect man. But he was blessed of God because of God's touch on his life, and our lives are richer today because God's love given to us through Murray. Murray often reminded me of Jesus' explanation of the Ten Commandments when he said these words: love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. Because of Murray's love for God and we his neighbors, our lives are richer and more blessed. I'd like to come close to a close, I don't want to lie to you, by sharing a poem that reminds me of Murray. It's called The Bridge Builder. It's written by William Allen Drungold. An old man was going along highway and came at the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast, deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him. He turned when safe on the other side, and he built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, why are you wasting your strength with building here? Your journey will end with ending day. You'll never again pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at eventide? The builder lifted up his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said, there follow after me today a young man whose feet must pass this way. The chasm that has been naught to me, to that fair-haired youth, may a pitfall be. He too must cross in twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. That, my friends, sums up my friend Murray Gibbons' life. He built many a spiritual bridge for us to use to cross the great chasm from this life to life eternal. Though unconventional he may have been, not meeting up to the mold of minister of the gospel in some people's minds, yet his life, energy, and finances were dedicated to helping folks like us cross the chasm and connect with the other side. Solomon writes these words in Proverbs 16:3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. And God surely established Murray's work and plans for his glory and for our benefit. As we come to the end of the service, I want to say to Stanley, Murray loved you immensely. He probably didn't show it because y'all are brothers, but he loved you immensely. We prayed for you every time we bowed in prayer, every time we got together. He loved Mary better than he loved you, Stanley. I asked him what happened with the women, and he said, well, Raymond got Zilphia, Ike got his wife, Stanley got Mary, and there were none left for me. Kelly, Brandon, Chad, Kendra, Noah, Gavin, and Kenny, you are the apple of your Uncle Murmur's eye, and you were his heart. Mary, you'll never know how much Murray loved you for loving him, in spite of all you had to do for him in his final days, scrubbing the floor and washing up after accidents, bringing him food, feeding him, seeing after medicine, and the list goes on and on. My friends, to each of you here today, and to those who couldn't make it from the trip from California, Murray loved you each in his own very special way. And I thank you for loving him and letting him know that he was loved. One final thing, and this is the final thing I want to say. Murray and I never left each other's presence without holding hands and saying, I love you, to each other. The last clear words I heard from Murray was on Good Friday. Mary and I were standing at the bed. I held his hand. Good night, dear friend. I love you. All afternoon he had mumbled at us. He drew a deep breath. And in that boisterous voice of his, he said, I love you back. I tell you this final story about Murray because I want you to remember to never pass up an opportunity to share your love with someone else. Jesus said, a new commandment I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciple if you have love one for another. Murray loved on us. Please take time to share that love with each other. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now, I have one other item of business I need to conduct before we go. We're going to do things a little differently in just a few moments. We're going to sing a hymn. We're going to allow the family to recess out and go over to the fellowship hall where you are invited to join them. But we're going to invite you to remain at your seat until we finish singing the hymn and we offer the benediction for you, okay? So as we sing the hymn, just stay where you are till we finish singing the hymn and we conclude with the benediction. And one more time, we're going to invite California to join us. In the fellowship hall, on one of the tables, are 4x6 cards and a bunch of ink pens. We'd like for you to take time to write a Murray remembrance of your own on the card and put it in the basket to share with the family so that in the days ahead they can have things to look at and to remember and to thank the Lord for. So if you'll do that for us, there are plenty of cards over there, plenty of ink pens, if you'll join us with that, please. Please stand as we sing hymn number 110, A Mighty Fortress is Our God. Join us in singing all stanzas. Almighty fortress. Hear now the benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord be with you as you're going about your ministry and service for him. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, it is raining cats and dogs outside. If you want to stay dry, you can go through this door and through the portico and into the fellowship hall. You are dismissed.